Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Hello. There we go. My name is Dolly Goyle, and I'm the Chief of Public Services here at San Francisco Public Library. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see everyone coming tonight for the 27th Annual Effie Lee Morris Lecture. Yay! This annual lecture honors the work of the late Effie Lee Morris by celebrating writers and illustrators for children whose work exemplifies the causes she championed: inclusivity, diversity, and the rights for all children to read, learn, and create. This is the first Effie Lee Morris lecture to be in person since 2019. Yeah, we're back. It is also the first hybrid lecture with a Zoom connection for patrons who physically can't be present here in the Koret Auditorium. Now, Effie Lee Morris was a woman ahead of her time. She was the first coordinator of children's services at San Francisco Public Library from 1963 to 1977, and also the first Black president of the Public Library Association, as well as the founder of the San Francisco chapter of the Women's National Book Association. Ms. Morris was a tireless champion of diversity, inclusivity, and the rights for all young people to read, learn, and create. She initiated the first annual celebration for Black history for youth at the Cleveland Public Library, and at the New York Public Library, she was the first librarian whose work focused on the needs of children who were blind or visually impaired. At San Francisco Public Library, she was especially noted for her commitment to personally visiting underserved communities to get books into the hands of all of our youth. Since 2020, the Maine Children's Center has partnered with San Francisco Public Library's Racial Equity Committee, which is led by Naomi Jelks here today, as co-producers of the Effie Lee Morris Lecture. In 2024, we plan to jointly produce the lecture in April with an expanded calendar of events focused even more on centering BIPOC authors and illustrators of works for children. This year is the first time we have added a book club component focused on providing equity to Black and brown youth in San Francisco through partnerships with two San Francisco Unified School District schools. Maine Children's Center librarian Rachel Feige has done outreach visits to two of these schools to provide enhanced library programming. And at the same time, our San Francisco Unified School District school librarian partner Gina Cargas has built enhanced literacy programming around Jewell Parker Rhodes' books among her students at both schools. Gina and some of the kids of the school book club, called the Owls Book Club, in honor of Effie Lee Morris' signature animal, are here with us at the lecture tonight. A small round of applause for them. Thank you to the Women's National Book Association for their ongoing support for this event. And of course, we're very, very fortunate to have the generous support of the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library for library programs, including tonight's lecture. I also want to thank the library staff who have worked really hard to organize this event. And in addition to Naomi, Lynn Davidson, the manager of the Fisher Children's Center here at the Main Library, and her entire team has worked so hard to produce this event. And thank you so much for your leadership. At this time, I'd like to welcome Lynn to the stage, and she'll have the honor of introducing tonight's featured author. Thank you, everyone.
Wow, there is so much sweet energy in this house. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, El Dorado. Thank you, San Francisco Community School. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We are so glad you are here. Welcome. And thank you, Dolly, for so beautifully representing SFPL with your words and your presence. Dolly has been our Chief of Public Services for only a few months, but we, the staff, and everyone in her new community are very lucky to have her with us. I'm Lynn Davidson. I'm the program manager at the Main Library Children's Center. My department is very proud to have co-produced this event in partnership, as you heard, with Naomi Jelks, our racial equity manager, and the library's Racial Equity Committee. I have a few things to share with you before we begin, and the first one is our land acknowledgement. And you will also find that in your program brochures if you have those. You can say it with me. This is a shorter version. This is one that we say with kids in the Main Children's Center, and it's a very poetic way to honor the first people who lived in what we now call San Francisco, the Ramaytush. And we say, here is the land, and here is the sky. Here are my friends, and here am I. We stand together, hand in hand, and we thank the Ramaytush, the original caretakers of this land on which we love to play. We promise to take care of it every day. Thank you so much for joining me. Always important to remember our history. A couple of quick housekeeping items, mostly for the adults. First, in the unlikely event of an evacuation emergency, please exit quickly but calmly through the back doors of the Koret where you came into this auditorium. Go up the stairs to your left out the Grove Street exit. Do not use the elevators. Following directions of security. And anyone with mobility challenges can come to the front of the auditorium and meet me, and I will escort you out through a safe passage through the back of the library. Second, staff will be photographing and filming tonight for our archives and promotional materials. If you would not like to be photographed or filmed, we respect that. So if that is the case and you don't already have a green dot on your clothes that shows you would rather not be filmed or photographed, if you don't want to be filmed or photographed, go ahead and raise your hand now, and our lovely ushers from the Women's National Book Association will make sure that you have a green dot. Okay, anybody who needs one, go ahead and raise your hand and they will be with you. Third, please silence all your devices that can make noise so we can welcome quiet into the room. When I do story time, I do it like this. Shh, let quiet come into the room, so that we can hear every word our speaker has to say to us. So adults, if I hear your phone ring, thank you so much, because I will take notes. That means you have pledged $1,000 to the Friends of the San Francisco Public Library, and they would be so delighted to talk to you. In a few minutes, you'll have the extraordinary pleasure of listening to Dr. Jewell Parker Rhodes. Dr. Rhodes is one of the world's most outstanding writers of best-selling books for young people, including Ghost Boys, Bayou Magic, I know people in this room have read that, Black Brother, I know more people in this room have read that, Paradise on Fire, and coming soon, her new book, a contemporary reimagining of Treasure Island. Dr. Rhodes' honors are too numerous to mention, but I will mention a Coretta Scott King Award and a Walter Dean Myers Award. Many of us in this room already know Dr. Rhodes because she did a powerful virtual class visit with us on March 17th over Zoom with El Dorado and SFC. So thank you for that too. And in addition to first Dr. Rhodes, there are many people to thank. Racial Equity Manager Naomi Jelks, and Youth Centers Manager Megan Anderson, who were the best thought partners, committee leads, supporters, and champions of this program through the entire process of developing and executing this event and expanding it into this year our first Kids Effie Lee Morris Owls Book Club. And a kids-only reception for all of our families who participated in the book club. I also want to thank City Librarian Michael Lambert, Chief of Public Services Dolly Goyle, Assistant Chief of the Main Library Katrin Reimuller, and our custodians, security, media services staff, public affairs team, and community programs and partnerships team. Because of their efforts, you are enjoying this evening tonight. And I especially want to thank the entire staff of the Main Children's Center. From the support and ideas you've all shared at every step along this journey to your hard and joyous work on every project we do together. I'm going to cry. To all the heavy lifting you did today, quite literally. You are all consummate professionals and deserve the entire community's love and appreciation. Our friends, literally the friends of the San Francisco Public Library who fund this and other programs throughout the system. And our friends would be delighted to sell you books. They're right there in the back. We have a book signing coming up after Dr. Rhodes speaks with us and after the Q&A. Adults can buy books from the friends in the back, and kids, if you don't already have a free book, we have a free book table in the back for you. Members of the Women's National Book Association San Francisco chapter are your gracious ushers this evening. They have championed this lecture series since its beginning. Effie Lee Morris herself was the founder of the WNBA-SF, and we appreciate that connection throughout our entire history with the WNBA. I especially want to thank SFUSD school librarian, teacher librarian Gina Kargas, who divides her time between our two partner schools. Give it up for Gina. Gina works at both El Dorado Elementary and San Francisco Community School. Gina's and her colleagues' astonishing dedication and creativity in developing the book club within their schools and special activities resulted in an enriched experience for every kid who participated. And Gina, you are one of the best program partners I have ever worked with. And I also want to extend a very special thanks to Rachel Fiega, one of our own Maine Children's Center librarians. Rachel worked very closely with Gina, supplying the library's part of the book club experience with a series of special outreach visits to both of the schools, where she led creative projects that she developed and anchored in the words, sights, sounds, and spirit of Bayou Magic and Black Brother, Black Brother. And did I mention Rachel works part-time and did all that? So you guys who have worked with Rachel, give it up for Rachel. Everybody. Rachel and Gina together built this book club experience from the ground up and made it shine. Jewell Parker Rhodes has many fans in this room, and some of the youngest of them are going to be talking to you from this stage in a few minutes. And, I have to flip my paper over. Before they do, I want to say to them, to Gabriel and Alexis, and all the other kids and teens who have joined us from all over San Francisco, and all of you who are watching us tonight over Zoom, you kids and youth are the VIPs at this event. You are the superheroes. For your love of reading and your dedication to letting your positive values take root in books and words, and letting your imagination take wings from books like the ones by Jewell Parker Rhodes. May you always be as brave but flexible as the steel in the fencing foils in Black Brother, Black Brother. And may your mind and spirit always glow with the luminescence of the fireflies in Bayou Magic. It's now my pleasure to welcome to the stage SFUSD school librarian Gina Kargas and two of her SFC students, Gabriel and Alexis.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Gina Kargas, and I am the teacher librarian at El Dorado and at SF Community School. Cheer if you or your kids or a relative go to one of those schools. Yeah. All right. So this year, both my schools partnered with SFPL so we could study Dr. Rhodes' work. It's been a wonderful experience, and Gabriel and Alexis are going to tell you a little bit about it.
My name is Gabriel, and I'm 9 years old.
My name is Alexis, and I am 10 years old.
This spring, 4th and 5th graders at my school read Bayou Magic by Jewell Parker Rhodes.
Each student at our school got our own copy of the novel. We had special visits from Rachel, a librarian from SFPL. We also read and studied the book in class and in the library. In addition, we got to meet Jewell Parker Rhodes on Zoom and ask her questions.
Bayou Magic is about a girl named Maddie who goes in Louisiana Bayou to visit her grandmother. She learned about her family's magic and explores the bayou?
The book has to do with the Gulf oil spill and mermaids. Like the water spirit Mami Wata, at school we learned about Louisiana culture and history, different bayou animals in Mami Wata. We also painted and collaged a big bayou with animals and mermaids.
My favorite part of the book was the character Bear.
My favorite part of the book was also meeting Bear because he was a good friend to Maddie. Thank you so much and have a great night.
All right, thank you, Gabriel and Alexis, and thank you to Lynn Davidson, Rachel Feige, and Dr. Rhodes for facilitating this project. And back to you, Lynn.
Thank you so much, Gina, Gabriel, and Alexis. Okay, that was my favorite part of the lecture, except for the part you're about to hear. You are about to hear from an extraordinary woman and an extraordinary writer. We are her biggest fans right now. Jewell, it has been such a pleasure getting to know you over Zoom, and right now, when you're here with us in San Francisco, Jewell Parker Rhodes is one of the most powerful, honest, and eloquent writers for children and youth whom I have ever read. It is now my great pleasure and honor to introduce to you your 27th annual Effie Lee Morris Lecturer, Dr. Jewell Parker Rhodes.
Oh my goodness. I am so touched and honored by all the hard work and support and love of everyone here within the public library community, the San Francisco book community, the security guards, the media people, everybody that, like Lynn, I want to cry. So I want to give a big shout out, and I also want to make a promise for continuing this program. In September, when my new book comes out, Treasure Island Runaway Gold, I will be donating in honor of all the wonderful kids here 200 copies of that book, okay? So that's a promise, and that's because children inspire all of us to do wonderful things, because children are the heart and soul of this world and of our future. I want to be a kid again. Wow. But I'm not. I'm a grandmother. And the thing that's been nice about this lecture is that I had a chance to reflect on my journey as a woman, as an educator, and start way back when I was maybe 4 years old, 9 years old, and 15 years old. And what I discovered in this journey is the idea that words are healing. That becoming a writer, I have been healing myself. And I am trying to now use those words to inspire you, to make sure that you have the self-confidence and self-esteem you so richly deserve, and that you are ready to give love, empathy, and compassion to yourselves, your family, your community, and the whole wide world. So, I'm going to start with the personal. I was born in a ghetto on the north side of Pittsburgh. I was born at a time when Emmett Till was being murdered for supposedly assaulting a white woman. And in those days, the magazines would show the murder of Emmett Till, show the burgeoning civil rights movement. And my grandparents and father didn't care that I saw images that I shouldn't have seen as a 2-year-old, as a 3-year-old, as a 4-year-old. And so my life has been steeped in the trauma of my community, the trauma of trying to fight for equality, and the trauma of a particular young boy having his innocence stolen. My mother abandoned me when I was about 8 months old. And my grandmother raised me and my sister, and she also raised 3 boy cousins because my aunt, whose husband had been murdered in a bar, was also living in this multi-story tenement household. And Grandma, God bless her, took care of 5 kids under 5. Think about that. Now, our extended home, yes, praise be. If you want to hear about grandmothers, and I love grandmothers, and I'm so happy because I'm a grandmother. But grandmothers are wonderful. And actually, I'll tell you this now. The reason why there's always an elder black woman in my stories is that that is my praise song to my grandmother. Because without her, I would not be who I am today. Grandma was working to provide, cooking and cleaning, but the thing that she did best of all was just show me love. I used to hide in the closet, a shy, lonely kid, because I thought at the time my parents' divorce, my mother leaving me, was my fault. So I would hide underneath all the coats. And it took me a while to figure out that I was hiding because I wanted to hear grandmother call, Jewel, Jewel child. And that was her way of saying I belonged, and I'd come running and she'd give me a hug. And on hot summer nights, grandmother used to tell me stories rooted in the African American oral tradition, though I didn't know to call it that then. And she would always tell these long stories. Do you kids have grandmothers who tell you these long stories, and grandfathers? And it's like, oh, and how many times have they told you? Yes, over and over again. But her stories would always end with a maxim. And one was, Jewel child, wear clean underwear, always. Yeah, you remember, yes. And that was Grandma's way of telling me to respect myself, okay? And to make sure that I had my own dignity, that I was presenting myself in a worthwhile manner. Now, I'm going to tell you kids, but don't tell your moms and dads, okay? I'm going to tell you kids, okay, shh. All right, moms and dads, you can't hear. When I was riding my bike one day, I flipped over the handlebars, and I had to be taken to the hospital. And the whole time I was upset because though my underwear was clean, it had holes in it. And Grandma, she was going to be upset with me. But anyway, other than that, I never forgot my clean, non-hole underwear. Grandma would also say, do good, and it'll fly right back to you. Her notion of karma. And she would say, Jewel child, there's nobody in the world better than you. And you're no better than anyone else. We're all a mixed blood stew. And isn't that the truth, that all of our blood bleeds red? So grandmother was grace-filled. But grandmother couldn't give me everything that I needed. Grandmother never finished 3rd grade. She was always taking care of her sisters or brothers, and then later her kids, and then later her kids' kids. So I needed educators and librarians to teach me about the world. Unfortunately, in those days, and kids, you might not believe this, you could not get books where they had people of color having adventures, or authors of color writing stories. So even though I wrote all the time, I had no idea that I could ever be an author, that brown-faced authors even existed in the world. And I do believe that the not seeing myself in books hampered me. It also stole from me my sense of heritage and culture. But when I became an independent reader, you couldn't keep me away from a book. I used to collect pop bottles for money, right? You get a nickel, and I'd go to the drugstore and I'd buy the comic books, the first graphic novels, because that was all I could afford. But any book that anybody gave me, I read. And that enriched my life. Now, here's the sad part. when I was going into the 3rd grade, much younger than Alexis and Gabriel, my mother came back to Pittsburgh and took our family to California, Los Angeles. And I lost the mother, the only mother I had ever known. During that time, and that's a time that I don't remember very well, I remember some beatings, and what did I do? I read. I remember times when there wasn't enough money in the house and I didn't have enough food to eat. What did I do? I read. I remember times when the utilities had been shut off, and I read. Reading, I knew would fill me in ways that no food, maybe even water could do. Reading centered me in a world that made me feel brave and made me feel loved and strong. Reading was my weapon against loneliness, and reading excited me and taught me wondrous things. When I was 14, my mother decided, because I had taken butter rather than margarine, which was butter was reserved for the guests, that I should no longer live with her, and she kicked me out of the house. I was 14. I went to live with my father, who had remarried, and he had a 2-year-old son. And in that household, I learned that to be a girl meant nothing, that it was the boy that was the most important, the gender inequality. So because I could read, I got a job at a half-price bookstore, and I sold books to other people, and I saved my money until I had enough money for a plane ticket, and I got on a plane, and I said, bye, California, and I went back to Pittsburgh to be with my grandmother. And Grandma was so happy to see me, but I had gone as a little girl, and now I came back as a hippie, big afro, flower child, okay? Remember those days? I was cool, you know? I was cool. And because they told me it was cold in Pittsburgh, this was January, and I was now 15 years old. Because they told me it was cold, guess what I had? I had a sweater. You know? But Grandma did not want me to end up lost. Some of my other cousins had ended up being teenage mothers or ended up being in jail, had lost their way and never finished high school. So Grandma signed me up for Allegheny Community College, but she couldn't afford it. So one day, Grandma got dressed like she was going to church with her fake fur coat and her hat, and had Grandpa, who we called Reverend, because he was a part-time preacher, he drove his car, and they drove us down to Mellon Bank. And at Mellon Bank, we went in to see a middle-aged white loan officer. And I'm still there with my dashiki and carrying on. And Grandma said she wanted $500 so that I could go to college and have some winter clothes. And this banker kept asking, what's your collateral? What's your collateral? How are you going to make good on the loan? And Grandma finally said, she's my collateral, right? It was like, really? And this white man said, a smart girl, that's very good collateral. And I felt and knew in my bones that this man must have read lots of books too. Because books teach us about humanity and love and warmth, you know. But I went off to college, right, as a drama major. Because all I ever saw on TV were the sports players, and I'm lousy at sports. You hear it for the young men who won the championship on their softball team. Yay. I'm lousy at sports, but I could sing and I could dance. And so the next fall, I got a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon University. And I was going to be, you know, an actress, dancer, because that was what I thought the world had presented as a role model for me to become. I'm a junior in college. I go to the library, and for the first time on the new fiction shelf, I see a book by a black woman, Gail Jones's Corregidora. And it was like, what? Black people write books? I didn't know that. And literally, the very next day, I switched my major to English. And I started the creative writing classes because that was what I was meant to be. And all my classmates were white, and all of them said to me, Jewell, how come you didn't tell me your characters are black? And I'd say, well, you never ever tell me your characters are white. But that was when I discovered that I had learned how to read white. And I never ever wanted that to happen to a child again. But because I lacked confidence, I didn't know how to write stories, I wrote 9 books for adults, trying to become good enough to write for young people. I wrote 9 books for adults that healed me in terms of me searching for my history and past. The Voodoo Dreams novel, my first novel, was about the African spiritual diaspora. Oh, it was a wonderful, wonderful journey. And when I tried to get it published, I actually had editors tell me that black people don't read books. I had editors turn me down. It took 3 years for that book to be published. And it was finally published. The editor said, well, I can't figure out who's going to buy this book, so I can only offer you $3,000. So I figured I had been working for almost 10 years straight for negative dollars, right? But I was growing. And after that, I was the first to write about the Tulsa Race Massacre, which now is very much part of today's news. But I was writing about that in 1998, and so on and so on and so on. And then there came a point, I think, and I didn't recognize it until you guys asked me to do the speech. There came a point where finally I got the call to be what I always wanted to be, a children's book author. Now, I had written 4 novels for adults based in New Orleans, and I love that city. And when Hurricane Katrina happened, it was like, what? I was so bereft. What about the children? I had also been in Los Angeles earthquake later on and down in Northridge. So I also knew the tragedies such as hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. Those affect children too. But we so rarely talk about children's resilience. You know, we focus on the adults. So one night I had heard that, they had bypassed one hurricane, but another one was coming, Hurricane Ike. And that night I went to bed and I had all kinds of horrible dreams. And when I woke up, Lanisha's voice was inside my head. She said, they say I was born with a caul, a skin netting covering my face like a glove. My mother died birthing me. I would have died too if Mama Yaya hadn't sliced the bloody membrane from my face. I let out a wail when she parted the caul, letting in first air, first light. If you read chapter 1, that all came out of me like a dream. It never, ever changed. And that was when my life truly began. I started writing the children's Louisiana Girls Trilogy, Ninth Ward, Sugar, and Bayou Magic. And I started then to think about, well, now I'm healing, I'm a young author for young people, but what is it that I do exactly? I heard about diversity, equity, inclusion, and so I wanted to know, how do I do diversity? And so I made this video that explains how Jewell Parker Rhodes does diversity. Thank you. The gentleman will play it for us. There you go. The Louisiana Girls Trilogy. So I always write with that I voice. So that's my grandma's tradition. It's amazing, you can read diverse books, but they don't necessarily reflect diverse language or diverse narrative structures. Sugar in particular is about the sugarcane plantations. And elders, how can we have a world without wonderful elders? I do believe my grandmother might have been a hoodoo lady. And there are the Brer Rabbit stories. And in sugar, we have the Chinese stories, particularly regarding the calendar and their famous rivers. Mami Wata. That's from sugar. In adventures and growth. Life is good and you can keep on growing. That's my character, Sugar. I saw the collages you did, students. They were simply wonderful. So with Ninth Ward, I also became concerned with justice regarding our environment, and that connects into Paradise Fire, on Fire. Now, for particularly those 3 books, my first 3 novels as a young adult author, that was what I ended up doing. And I didn't know that that was what I was doing until I stopped and said, what am I doing? And that's what I'm trying to share with today's youth. Now, after those, well, before we go on there, I asked today's media specialists, Chris and Michael, to show this video because you guys read Bayou Magic and we weren't sure you had seen it. So here, this has been added especially for you. Go ahead. This summer,
I'm visiting my grandmother. I get to stay with her in her house in the Louisiana Bayou. When grandmother sees me for the first time, she says, "About time you got here, Maddie. The Bayou and me, we've been waiting." She teaches me about nature. We've got to be good to all of it. Land, water, and air. Bayou folks follow old ways that city folks forget. She teaches me that I can call the fireflies, and they're just the beginning. There's magic. Here in the Bayou, I discovered that I like me. I want to be a hero. I want to do good, be brave. I'm not sure I want to know the future, but I do know there is something that's going to happen. I can feel it. I have to be a hero. For Grandmere and for me.
I love Maddie. And that's, to me, when I look at you young people, that's what I see in you. I see that you are heroes. Linda was so right. You really are superheroes. And I see how the love that you have from your parents and your grandparents' community is instilled and infused with you. And my books, more than anything, are trying to remind you that this is who you are. And don't forget it when you become an adult. Now, my career changed when they asked me to write 9/11 book, Towers Falling. And when they asked me to write that book, I said, no way, no way. It's too hard. It's too sad. I can't write that book. But I actually finally wrote that book because it made me feel as though if we don't keep talking to you kids today in a non-patronizing way, how are you going to become ready to be citizens of tomorrow, right? That is the problem with banning books. That is the problem with changing curriculum. That how can you get ready to change and make the world a better place if you were kept from knowing about the world? So Towers Falling talks about 9/11 and gets you kids who are born way after it to understand why we as Americans who historically love immigrants, who historically band together as a new democratic community, how important it is for us to keep that. So when I teach Towers Falling, I tell kids, don't grow up like some people have done, and when they get embittered, they start scapegoating other people. They start scapegoating migrants, new immigrants, scapegoating people who don't look like their skin color and their skin tone. And why? Because they're just scared. So Maddie wasn't scared. She was worried about the future, but she knew that she could step up, that she could make changes. She could be a hero and make things better. So when you are like maybe, 32 and you have your own kids and you're sharing maybe my books with your kids, I hope you will be there remembering that really as a child right now, you are a very, very wonderful self. Keep that child in you. Now, after Towers Falling, they asked me to write Ghost Boys about the murder of a young black boys. And so what did I say? Kids, what do you think I said? No, that's right. I said, no way, no how. Why do I want to write about that? But the reason why I wrote about that is because you guys deserve to know that history. You needed to know why I, Jewell, because now I'm moving into agency and saying, okay, now it's not just going to be stories about kids being strong and wonderful, but kids who are being strong and wonderful and are really going to make a difference, regarding racial injustice, regarding social injustice, regarding environmental injustice, So I wanted you to, in my novels, see me bearing witness to the fact that why was it that when I was a little young girl, a 14-year-old black boy got killed for no reason, no good reason. There isn't any good reason for killing anybody, in my opinion, but for no good reason he was killed, and then they blamed him for his own death. And now I'm a grandmother, and there are still young men and girls being killed. So Trayvon Martin, Laquan McDonald. So our generation hasn't done all the change that we need to do. So young people, I want you to be inspired to help us make it even better. So here's Ghost Boys. Ghost Boys is about Emmett Till, the young black man who was murdered in Mississippi. Supposedly he said, "Hey baby," to a white woman. Supposedly he whistled at her. Supposedly he did all these terrible things that were insulting. And actually the woman later at the age of 82 said, "I lied." And nothing ever ill happened toward her. A lot of the Till family family members, they actually died wondering, did their nephew, did their son, did their cousin maybe do something, that they never ever really knew the truth, and had to wait and wait and wait until finally this woman said there wasn't anything, not a thing that he did. But my novel Ghost Boys starts with the death of another boy. How small I look, laid out flat, my stomach touching ground, my right knee bent and my brand new Nike stained with blood. I stoop and stare at my face, my right cheek flattened on concrete. My eyes are wide open, my mouth too. I'm dead. I thought I was bigger, tough, but I'm just a bit of nothing. My arms are outstretched like I was trying to fly like Superman. I'd barely turned sprinting. Pow, pow. 2 bullets. Legs gave way. I fell flat, hard. I hit snowy ground. Miles running, she's wailing, my boy, my boy. A policeman holds her back. Another policeman is standing over me, murmuring, it's a kid. It's a kid. Miles struggling, she gasps like she can't breathe. She falls to her knees and screams. I can't bear the sound. Sirens wail. Other cops are coming. Did someone call an ambulance? I'm still dead, alone on the field. The policeman closest to me is rubbing his head. In his hand, his gun dangles. The other policeman is watching Ma like she's going to hurt somebody. Then he shouts, stay back. People are edging closer, snapping pictures, taking video with their phones. Stay back. The policeman's hand covers his holster. More people come. Some shout. I hear my name. Jerome. It's Jerome. Still, everyone stays back. Some curse, some cry. Doesn't seem fair. Nobody ever paid me any attention. I skated by, kept my head low. Now, I'm famous. I didn't think I could write this book. And actually, though I was inspired by young people to at least give it a try, I made a bet with my editor that if the book did not turn out well, we simply wouldn't publish it. You know, she could have the money back and so long. But I would try. And in trying to write this story, it nearly broke me. For about a year afterwards, I was depressed and I thought, I'll never be able to write again. And you know who healed me? Whose words healed me? Kids. Kids who read the book and said thank you. Kids who wanted to talk about how a white girl and a Hispanic boy and a black kid could all come together to bear witness. And after that, I was able to write again. See, words are powerful. It is also powerful that Mamie told Emmett's mom when she heard that her son was dead, she insisted to the Mississippi government to send her son back home to Chicago. Reasonable, right? They fought her. They did not want to send Emmett home. Finally, they sent him on a train, and when he got to Chicago, all the family said to her, you don't want to see the body, you don't want to see what he looks like. And she says, no, I do. And when she saw him, you could only recognize him by the ring on his finger. And she said, she bore witness with her words. She said, I want the whole world to see what they've done to my boy. And because of that, we had the change, the catharsis for the civil rights movement. In fact, maybe if she hadn't said those words when she did, it might have come much later on. But you had Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, so many people across faiths, across ethnicities, across genders, testifying, marching, standing up for civil rights. And see that little lady with the sign, the number sign? That's her mugshot. That is Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks, who said, I'm not going to sit in the back of the bus no more because of the color of my skin. Rosa made that statement almost a year to the day that Emmett was murdered. He surely was in her mind. And I'm showing you a picture, and they're California men, Tommy Smith and Juan Carlos, who ran track for San Jose State. And if you go to San Jose State, you can see these statues of these beautiful black men with their fists upraised. They actually were in the 1968 Olympics, and they gave the Black Power sign, not because they didn't love their country, but because they were saying, we have to recognize that America hasn't lived up to its promise. There is a wonderful book called Victory Stand by Tommy Smith that just came out as a graphic novel where he talks about how literally they shooed them out of Mexico City. All the sponsors dropped them. They never got to run professionally again. Literally, their lives were upturned. Who does that remind you of? Colin Kaepernick. So what I want to say is that bearing witness, using actions, words, art, like making a books, is part of all of our human culture. And you don't have to be a grown up to do it. You can be a child. You can do it by singing "We Shall Overcome," by voting, knowing that your vote was fought for and you should, use it to make the world better. You can be just a kid. But just because you are a kid doesn't mean you don't have power. And that's what Ghost Boys is really all about. Power that you can't maybe undo the past, but all of us can do our best to make things better, to make things right.
Why?
Why?
Why are you following me?
Why my hoodie make me look suspicious?
Why does my music make me dangerous?
Why are people that are supposed to protect me attacking me?
Why are you afraid of me? Why do you think I'm dangerous?
Why do I afraid of people who are supposed to protect me?
Why can't I make a peace sign without you labeling it a gang sign?
Why does standing your ground only work when I'm on the ground?
Why do you show this photo over this one?
Why do you only stop and frisk me?
Why do you have low expectations for me?
Why can't I run down the street without causing alarms?
Why do you think I'm a thug?
Why do you assume I'm armed?
Why can I breathe?
Why is my mom scared every time I leave the house?
Why are you targeting me?
Why am I a target?
Why?
Why? Why? I know why.
And it has to stop.
It must stop.
Because I have dreams. Because I can change the world.
Because I'll make a difference.
Because I have a family.
Because I am strong.
Because I'm talented.
I have a voice.
I can find a cure.
I have goals.
I can lead the country.
I am determined.
I have a future.
Because I'm a scholar.
I am powerful.
I'm someone's friend. I'm someone's brother.
I'm someone's son.
Someone loves me.
And because my life matters too.
My life matters.
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 Our lives matter.
And so did theirs.
This was taken in New York City's Central Park. It's just kind of ironic that you can hear the police sirens. But the woman who did this, Carrie Laurel Davis, she used her art as a filmmaker to bear witness, to make the world better. She had these young men read her words, and it made a difference. So this is her public service announcement to remember that kids of color are as valuable as any other kid anywhere. Everyone needs their story heard, which is what my career is really about, telling the story that wasn't taught to me, that I'm now trying to show and mirror back to you, so you'll grow up and write and read and make art that bears witness, that heals. And this is the last words of the Ghost Boy story. Bear witness, my tale is told. Wake, only the living can make the world better. Live and make it better. Don't let me or anyone else tell this tale again. Peace out, Ghost Boy. After I broke through on this agency of bearing witness, let's see if it goes. I wrote, whoops. Does it go to, there, maybe I need something. There, I did, it was my fault. I went to tell Black Brother, and I'm gonna be very short here. The Black Brother is my most personal book. All my other stories, I don't know these characters. I don't know where their names come from. I can't do the things that they do. But in Black Brother, I told the story of where my family and I tried to keep ourselves whole in a world that wanted to tear us down. I also wanted to discuss that you might find racism or racial bias in the streets, but it can also be in the schools. We experienced this firsthand when we took our son to, well, when he became a teenager, like 12 years old, people started thinking that he was, not a good guy. People who knew him, who knew that he's the sweetest, most kindest person you could possibly imagine, just sort of changed. And so we went to a lot of different schools and finally ended up in a school in Boston, where one day they called me and said, Jewell, you need to come and pick up your son. I said, why? They said, well, you should just come and pick up your son. And Evan was upset about something, and he was marching and didn't have a weapon or anything like that. He was just, And when I got there, the first thing out of this person's mouth to me, the school administrator, was that next time I'm going to call the police. And I just felt such fear for my son's life. So down with racism and bias in life of all sorts, all stages. This is my family. See how young I used to look? My husband is 6'4.5". His grandmother was from Norway, and he has hair that goes blonde in the summer and blue eyes. Now he looks like Gandalf, okay? He does, right? Now he looks like Gandalf. And my daughter, Kelly, is white appearing. Kelly, warrior woman. And my son, Evan, is brown appearing. I actually didn't want to love and marry my husband because racism was so much worse regarding interracial couples back then. People would stare at us, they would hoot at us, they would call us names, and that was why my family, we came west again to California, came west to raise our kids in a more remarkable, kinder world. But did you know that race is an artificial construct? There's a woman named Angelica Das that is putting together photographs of human skin tones. And so far, she's documented that there are over 4,000 skin tones. There is no real black or brown or, white. It just isn't so. And what my grandmother told me when I was 4, that everybody's a mixed blood stew, is true. There is no pure anything. We are one big human family, one kin. And that's what Black Brother is about. That love of saying, go out and be one in the world. And real quick, it's also about fencing. Alexander Dumas, did you know the guy who wrote The Three Musketeers, The Man in the Iron Mask, was black? If I had known that, right, I might have started writing sooner. Yeah, I didn't know that. But I love watching Richard Chamberlain and all those other people fight and do battles. I didn't know he was a black man until I was 27. And he was writing about his father, the general, who was so superior as a general and as a horseman that when Napoleon invaded Africa, a lot of the Africans thought he must be Napoleon. And that was when Napoleon, jealous, whisked him away, put him in jail, and literally disappeared him. And that became the basis of one of Dumas's most famous novels. So I talk about fencing and a lot of other things, but most importantly, what I wanted to say is to remind you of that agency, which has taken me all this time to figure out, right? My whole life, which you guys have already figured it out at 8, 9, 10 years old. So don't forget it. That you should always be you. If other people can't see your beauty, your glory, your uniqueness, your humanity, that's their problem. It is not yours. So, I'm bearing witness that I feel that I am a wholer person because of my desire to read, to write, and to connect with young people. So for every young person in this audience, thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. I really and truly do. So now, read my books, write me your stories, contact me anytime you want, and that's all I have to say about words are healing and healing words. Thank you very much for having me.
So now we're going to have some Q&A.
Okay. You guys are awesome. Ask me anything you want. I'll do my best to give you the truest answer.
So, we've got some questions. Can everybody hear me?
Oh, my goodness. Woohoo!
So, before we start our Q&A with Dr. Rhodes, you guys, if you want to be heard over Zoom, we're also transmitting to people who are listening to us on Zoom. You've got to hold the mic. Am I doing it right, guys? Okay, so do it just like this. When I give you the mic, hold it like this and speak up loud and strong. Oh, I'm looking for kids. I'm looking for kids who have questions.
What inspired you to write Treasure Island?
Oh, I forgot. That was the last picture, too. Oh. Let's see if I can find you a picture of Treasure Island. Oh, do I have to go? Oh, it was? Oh, you saw it. Oh, you saw it. Okay, good. Then I won't worry about it. There. Oh, thank you. I got to tell you, your library media folks are just wonderful. Actually, I was asked to write Treasure Island. Yes, they are. Yes. I was asked to write Treasure Island from a film company, Temple Hill Productions. They did the Twilight series and a lot of other great YA novels and movies, I mean. And HarperCollins would publish the book. And actually, Lynn looks like my HarperCollins editor, who is Miss Davidson, who is my HarperCollins editor, is my favorite editor. She's wonderful. So I was like, you must be her sister. Yes, but I love Robert Louis Stevenson. As a scholar, I've taught Robert Louis Stevenson. And did you know for a long time, children's literature was all about showing children how to be good mini adults. And Treasure Island was the first children's novel that showed an adult pirate betraying a child. That was like, oh my gosh, that's revolutionary. So I knew a lot about Stevenson and the history and the lore. And I just thought it would be cool, and especially it would be cool if it had a movie. And on the back of the cover, it doesn't show it here, it shows that he has a friend, a white friend. He has Asian African-American girlfriend named Kiko, and they have a dog named Hip Hop. And this is my Hip Hop, yeah, it's a little rat terrier. And you know there are rat terrier contests to see how quickly a rat terrier can kill rats? Seriously, they're real contests. See, I learned the strangest things. And apparently, a good rat terrier can kill hundreds of rats in a matter of seconds. So my Hip Hop has his moment. But here's this thing, okay? They wanted it set on the island of Manhattan. That's an island, okay, all right. But what do they sail in? Skateboards. So it's skateboard sailing, yes. And where do they sail? A lot of the time in the underground subways that have been abandoned. And it's not clear whether the pirate is a real pirate or not a real pirate, but he has this gang of other young kids, kind of like Charles Dickens, like, thieving boys. They do things, steal from the rich, and sometimes they don't give to the poor, though. But anyway, they have another crew, and so it's like my character Zane, Jack, Kiko, and Hip Hop, who have to stand up to them and find the treasure. And the treasure is gold, but it's based on, did you know that Lower Manhattan, Wall Street, was called Wall Street because it was a slave market? That 1 in 4 of every New York resident was a slave, and there used to be a 5-acre cemetery of black folks, right? Most of Manhattan is built on tops of the slaves or free people of color's bones. And there is a museum there that's now on 1/4 of an acre, that's all that's left, which when they discovered the bones, George Bush had just introduced a new ruling that they had to do archaeological investigations. So the Department of Parks and Recreation Services turned it into a park exhibit called the African Burial Ground. And so there's only just a small area left of that burial ground. So what they also discover is their heritage, their culture, their inner strength, and they give all the money that they discover, the treasure that they discover, back to the community. They're really happy kids. And you know what else? It's funny, it's fast, it's filled with adventure, and they liked it so much. They've already asked me to do another one, which will be set in the Caribbean, Treasure Island, The Magical Isle. And in the book, there are pictures. The very famous Treasure Island edition has N.C. Wyeth having done illustrations. They're gorgeous, just gorgeous. And so I said, we have to have illustrations. And so they hired an illustrator, and there's like a dozen illustrations of the pirates, when they have to walk the plank, their skateboard trials. It's not in here. And it's just it's going to be a gorgeous, gorgeous book. So it'll be out at the end of September, and it goes on sale October 3rd. And cross your fingers, we hope there will be a movie. The writer's strike has slowed things down, but the idea is there's supposed to be a movie. And also for Black Brother, for a while, Steph Curry's company was going to make it into a movie, but there was an announcement, and I don't know if it's going to happen, but there was an announcement in Variety that Venus and Serena Williams are going, and the woman Alexandra, who was the executive producer for the Cate Blanchett movie Tar, they've all banded together to make a movie, a Black Brother, but they're going to make them teenagers. And there might be some other movies in the work. And Bayou Magic is on Apple TV series Ghostwriter. The final 2 episodes are about the Black Mermaid. And actually, that was the first time some people told me that they had ever seen a Black Mermaid on TV, on film, ever. And this was before Disney's Little Mermaid. And those of you who have read Bayou Magic, you know, Mami Wata's cooler than Ariel. Cool, cool, cool. Oh, yeah. Who's next?
Oh, let's see. Let's find us another kid. Don't worry, we'll get to some adults too.
What would you say was the biggest challenge about writing Ghost Boys?
Finding out how to tell the story. There's a lot of, like I showed you the things that I add for diversity in my books. I have a certain approach that I understand now to how I write stories. But every story will have its own narrative structure, how it ought to be told. And finding that is the hard part. Western literature will say you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So that means I should have written a story so that it goes along and then Jerome dies and then it shows what happens afterwards. But that's not an authentic structure for a lot of cultures. Some Native American, some African American, you know. So our Gabriel Garcia Marquez, you know, that literally by having the character die first, it put the emphasis on what happened afterwards. And it also gave space for Jerome, even as a ghost, to learn his history from Emmett and to learn that he, though dead, has a role in the world. So my grandmother taught me that all spirits are alive, you know, that the space or the line between the living and the dead is very slim. So Grandma actually died when I started to become a writer, and I got a chance to tell her, and she laughed because she said, "You're going to be writing stories." But she's been dead for many, many, many years, but I still talk to her all the time. So I told my editor I can write Ghost Boys if I write it using ghosts. And my editor told me a year later that she thought I had gone off my rocker. She thought there was something wrong with me. So that was the hardest part. If you notice, there's a lot of stories where they'll take somebody's victimhood and they show how everybody else around them gets better and stronger and wonderful, right? But it's almost as though, to me, they step on the victim. The victim's a plot device. And I wanted to give Jerome a 3-dimensional characterization, as well as the young man, Carlos, who gave him the gun, as well as his family and his sister, and that they all have character development and character growth. And that was being able to show that he was not gone. Every goodbye ain't gone, Grandma would say, that he wasn't gone. So once I figured that out, then I was able to write the story. But I would write a little bit, and then I'd cry a lot. I'd write a little bit, then I'd cry a lot. So it took me a long time. It took me 2.5 years to write Ghost Boys. Yeah, and now people all over the world read it. It's probably my most successful book. Yeah. Any other questions?
Oh, let's see. Oh, here's a question back here, right here.
Do you have a favorite book?
That's like saying, do I have a favorite kid? I mean, it's like, I love them all for different reasons. I will say I had the most fun writing Treasure Island, that it was just joyous fun. Ninth Ward is special because it was the first, you know. I love all my books. The one, though, that I'm the most proud of right now, I think, is, in fact, Ghost Boys. But I've had some people say that they think Treasure Island is the best book I've ever written. I'm not sure about that yet. So I like them all for different reasons, but it's like I like they all made me. Do you know what I mean? They all made me, and they all informed me. Some writers will write the same book over and over and over again. And what I do is I write what attracts me in the world, or what kids will say to me that inspires me. And then I figure out how to write the book the way that I need to write it, and who's the character. I wait for the character. Do you know in my sleep I dream stories? My husband says I'll be talking about, oh, and John ran out the window, and this happened and that happened, and seriously, is it really? And it is true. When I wake up, all of a sudden I'll have a voice in my head, and when I have that voice, then I can write the novel. So something weird happens. I don't know what it is that happens. Or like Paradise on Fire, I don't know about bouldering and camping and all that stuff. I was a city kid, but I discovered it and learned it. So I think, in a way, maybe my book writing is me trying to give myself the childhood that I wish I had had. So that's why I'm always writing different stories. Oh, of course I should skateboard. Not. Okay, thank you. I love all the books, yes.
Thank you. Maybe two more?
Okay, I'm fine. I'm whatever. You guys are fine. I'm fine.
See. Oh, here's somebody. Let's get somebody in the back. So right over here.
Is it okay if who's your favorite character in Paradise on Fire?
Oh, in Paradise on Fire. You know, I honestly have to say, Ryder. I have either a dog or a cat in every story that I write. So I really love Ryder. But other than that, I really love a doggo. And some of you, I noticed in your Bayou Magic posters, you had a picture of an eagle, and you talked about how eagles are special in Louisiana. And I knew that too, and eagles are special in California. But in Africa, they used to have a big festival of the eagles in Nigeria every year. And then climate change made it that the eagles didn't come anymore. So in my mind, I linked Adago's African heritage without egos to her American heritage with eagles, you know, that made sense in my mind. So I like Adago and the fact that she is like, if she had a spirit animal, it would be the eagle. Thank you.
And what was your inspiration for Paradise on Fire?
You know, like all of you, I was here when we had the wildfires in California, and the sky was all dirty and the air smelled and nobody could breathe properly. But particularly, I wanted to write a story that showed that if city children don't get exposure to nature, we're doing our world a disservice. I didn't know about trees or camping or water. I still can't swim because the pools were segregated, you know? I'm going to try to change that this year. So it was also an attempt to say, you know, we need to do a better service of having city kids be part of nature. Because if they don't experience the glory of it, why will they be invested in wanting to help save it to combat climate change? Yeah. Yes? Yes.
Hey, we've got a grown-up. We have a very brave grown-up.
First, thank you, Dr. Rhodes, for appearing today.
Oh, thank you.
I'm a middle school teacher in Oakland, and I teach a reading class. And one of the novels we read is Ghost Boys, who's my very loved copy. But not to give too much away, I know that your first draft was very short compared to what we have today.
Yes.
Or actually, I want to back up and thank you for writing this book as well, because it really helps start that conversation. And for a lot of my students, it's their first time ever hearing about Emmett Till.
Oh, yes, yes.
But to fast forward, so with this draft, I know you added a lot more characters compared to the first draft. And for Officer Moore in particular, I can only imagine how hard that was to humanize him. So could you speak to the process of what it was like to write the Officer Moore that we read in the book today?
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that question. It is true that originally Ghost Boys was 27 pages, and I sent it to my editor and said, "That's it, I'm done." And she said, "Jewell, it's a little short." But it wasn't, Carlos didn't appear until like a year later. You know, it was a long, convoluted story. But I think it was my grandmother's love again that she had taught me that having come from a family and a people that had been stereotyped, the worst thing I could do would be to stereotype others, you know, to commit that same kind of sin in life or in literature. And I worked really hard that the result, unfortunately, is the same. A child died because Officer Moore fired his gun. But I wanted it to be ambiguous. Was it because he was racist? And I think, to me, the police officer who killed George Floyd was indeed a racist. But there is a possibility that he had been acculturated to be fearful of kids of color, that there are people of color. There are studies that show that because of the same television and magazines that I grew up on, a lot of the older generation or their family backgrounds, they have a visceral fear of skin color difference. And they project these stereotypes, you know, onto these students, and that's real. So he might have done that. He might have just responded when he said, "I'm in fear for my life." He felt that was his truth, you know, because we as a society had taught him that based on our not addressing the sin of slavery. So I did that on purpose, and I was very proud that I left that ambiguous because I wanted kids to have that discussion. So if the result is the same, does it matter whether it's bias or racism? Or if it's racism, how do we stop that? And maybe you can. But bias, and looking forward in media, maybe the young people here today will stop that there'll be filmmakers or magazine publishers and book editors. So that was important to me, and I do think I got it right. And so it's very disturbing that in Florida and Texas, the book is banned. And mainly it's banned because of the police officer. And in fact, in Florida, Miami-Dade, I had just Zoomed with one of their schools about Ghost Boys. And we had a great conversation. And the next week, the police chief went to the school board and said that this book did an injustice to police officers by saying that all police officers were killers, right? And he got the book banned. And so it makes me think, what is it that gives a police officer the power to overcome, you know, the wisdom of cultural curriculum specialists, teachers, educators? Why is he more important than they are? But he succeeded in getting the book banned. And what I think is true is that the man couldn't read. He could not read. Because if you read that book, it is open for interpretation. And it was done purposely. And Jerome at one point says, is it a lie if somebody really believes that truth? You know? I mean, you know what I mean? That that's all they've ever been taught. So, well, yeah, it is a lie, but because it's a truth that they've been taught, we can then perhaps unteach it and move on and have a teachable moment, which is what I hope to do with this book. Yeah, it was just interesting, yeah. So I'm pleased the young men are reading it. And you saw the line, all of you, where Jerome is no longer Jerome, but he's Ghost Boy. He had his character arc, and he says, "Peace out." And actually somebody wrote me, and they thought maybe that was somehow or another a gang call. And it was like, what? You know, but I get a lot of stories from, say, 64-year-old white man who said, "I never heard of Emmett Till," you know, and unfortunately, in terms of the black community, some parts of the black community, they haven't heard of it either, and it's had terrible consequences. I went to an all-boys school in Boston, all black boys, and one boy came out to me and he says, "You mean this is a pattern of people being afraid of young black boys, you know? This is a pattern?" And I said, yes. It's been going on since I was a little girl and before that. And then he looked at me and he said, I always thought it was me. I thought something was wrong with me. So when they talk about stripping away culture, identity, and heritage and courses from our curriculum that shower all children with more knowledge, mirrors and windows, about our culture, they are also undermining the self-confidence, the self-esteem, and the self-awareness of the kids whose histories are excluded. So young men, and then if you go on the street or in school, and after a while you begin to think there's something wrong with me, it's like, how can you grow up and be healthy? Do you know what I mean? How can you if you feel the world is against you and doesn't love you? And yet that's what my husband and I had to do for our kids. We love you. My grandmother Jeffrey, we love you. And how as parents and the community, we have to work extra hard to give the loving that should be the natural right of every single child. But we have to give the loving and the armor to help our kids hold themselves together. And I do see great progress in the youth here. I see great progress in the West. And if I get it to others, I'll never live in lots of places in America ever again. Yeah. Oh. Thank you. Any last questions, real quick? No? You guys got to go.
Beautiful place to end, but I think, okay, one
That
last
was it. Well,
question.
okay. Well, it seems right we should end with a student. So, it does. Thank you. Last question.
Why did you choose to write about tragic events in history?
I did not know I was an historical novelist. I really didn't. But when I was trying to write, after I had switched my major to English, the writing instructor said, write what you know. And all I knew was like being poor and living in a ghetto in Pittsburgh, And it wasn't a good place to be at the time, though there were a lot of good about it, especially my grandmother. So I said, I want to write what I don't know from my drama background. So I went and got a cookbook that told of Creole and Louisiana cooking and told of a voodoo queen named Marie Laveau and had a French lullaby. And I was off running and I went to Louisiana and became inspired. So I do like books that stretch you intellectually, stretches me intellectually, and stretches me emotionally. But what I didn't know until I finished the Louisiana Girls Trilogy, and I didn't recognize it, but my publishers recognize that I am very good at taking bad stuff and making it better. So the trick is, how do I write a book and I keep you wanting to read it and getting to the end? How do I get you to trust me that, no, you will not be downtrodden when you finish this book? And that seems to be my gift. And that seems to be the gift that I was given by my grandmother. That, things can be really, really tough, and sometimes they were really, really tough for me, and they got better and better and better. And when they're tough, I be resilient, I persevere, I don't blame anybody else, except I will blame systemic racism at the time, or genderism, or whatever. And you move on. So if you think about it, how cool is that? Where I came from and where I am now should not have happened, would not have happened, had it not been for love and curiosity and wanting to know stuff, and a librarian, many of them, giving me a book, okay? So get your education, get your books, and you can do anything. And one last thing, and I'll quit. My granddaughter's life, Clara, her life will be different, and her children's life will be different. My kids went to college. In my family, I was the first ever, So it's like, think about that, how far we've come. Why? Words. Thank you, librarians. Thank you, teachers. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you.